Victor Hugo, the voice of justice and freedom. Welcome to another episode of Learn English Through Stories. Today, we have a special shadowing practice exercise for you. Shadowing is a technique where you listen and repeat, following my pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. This will help you improve your English fluency while learning about an inspiring historical figure. Have you ever read a book so powerful that it changed the way people think about society? Victor Hugo was not just a writer, he was a voice for justice, freedom, and the poor. His words shaped France and inspired movements around the world. But who was he, and why do his books still matter today? Let's find out. How to use this episode for shadowing. 1. Listen carefully to the story. 2. Repeat after me, mimicking the pronunciation and rhythm. 3. Practice multiple times to boost your fluency. Chapter 1. The Early Life of Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo was born in 1802 in Besançon, France. His father was a general in Napoleon's army, which meant that Hugo's childhood was filled with travel and constant change. His family moved frequently, and he had to adapt to different cities and cultures. Despite the instability, Hugo developed a love for reading and storytelling at an early age. His mother encouraged his education, and by the time he was a teenager, he was already writing poetry and winning literary awards. His passion for words and ideas made him stand out, and he soon decided to dedicate his life to literature. At 20 years old, Hugo published his first book, and soon after, he became well known in literary circles. His early works were mostly romantic poetry, filled with strong emotions and vivid imagery. However, as he matured, his writing became more focused on social issues, and he started to use literature to express his beliefs about justice and human rights. Chapter 2. A Writer with a Mission. Victor Hugo was not just a writer, he was a man with a purpose. He believed that literature should help society, and he used his books to fight against poverty, injustice, and oppression. One of his most famous novels, The Hunchback of Notre-Dame 1831, was not only a tragic love story, but also a call to preserve France's historical buildings. The book made people appreciate the beauty of Notre-Dame Cathedral, which was in danger of being destroyed at the time. His greatest masterpiece, Les Unforgettable, was much more than just a novel. It was a powerful story about justice, redemption, and struggle. Through the character Jean Valjean, Hugo showed the harsh realities of poverty and law enforcement in 19th century France. The novel became a symbol of hope and resistance, and it continues to inspire people today. Hugo also fought against the death penalty and used his writing to defend human rights. He believed in a better society and wanted his books to make people think about compassion and change. Chapter 3. Exile and Resistance. Because of his strong political opinions, Hugo was forced to leave France in 1851 when Napoleon III took power. He lived in Belgium, Jersey, and Guernsey for nearly 20 years, but instead of staying silent, he used his time in exile to write some of his most powerful works. During this period, he wrote less as well as political essays and poems about freedom and democracy. He was not afraid to speak out against tyranny, and his exile only made his words stronger, but his influence remains. Even while living outside of France, Hugo remained deeply connected to his homeland. His writings inspired revolutions and protests, and he became a symbol of resistance against oppression. Chapter 4. Return and Legacy. In 1870, Napoleon III lost power, and Hugo was able to return to France as a national hero. People celebrated his bravery and dedication to justice. He spent his later years continuing to write and support social causes, always advocating for the poor and the oppressed. When he passed away in 1885, more than 2 million people attended his funeral in Paris. He was buried in the where France honors its greatest leaders. His books, ideas, and beliefs lived on, influencing writers, activists, and leaders across the world. Today, Victor Hugo's works are still read, studied, and performed. His novels have been adapted into movies, plays, and musicals, with Les being one of the most famous stage productions of all time. Key vocabulary and expressions. Before we finish, let's go over some key words and expressions from this story. Learning these will help you improve your vocabulary and comprehension. Try to remember how they were used in the story. Justice, fair treatment for all people. Freedom, the right to make choices and be independent. Exile, being forced to leave your home country. Injustice, unfair treatment of people. Legacy, what a person leaves behind for future generations. Redemption, the act of making up for past mistakes. Oppressed, people who are treated unfairly or without rights. Democracy, a system where people choose their leaders. Marginalized, people who are pushed to the edges of society. Hero, someone admired for their bravery and good actions. Final thoughts and moral of the story. Victor Hugo's story teaches us that words have power. His writings changed France and continued to inspire people around the world. He reminds us that justice, freedom, and compassion are worth fighting for. Next time you hear a song from Les or see a picture of Notre-Dame, remember the man behind the words, Victor Hugo. Don't forget to subscribe. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow the podcast so you never miss a new story. Share this episode with a friend who loves literature, and leave us a comment with your thoughts. Who should we talk about next? See you in the next episode of Learn English Through Stories.